Welcome to the Investment Dive, brought to you by Corporate Capital Market Limited. Joining you today are your hosts, Amanda and Adrian.
Okay, let's get into it. We're doing a specific deep dive today, really focusing on those of you maybe running your own business or well into your professional careers here in Sri Lanka. And our mission is pretty crucial, actually. We need to figure out that baseline for retirement, answer that big question. How much is enough?
It's probably the most fundamental calculation anyone planning to retire needs to make. And, well, for many high earners, entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka, there's a real urgency, isn't there?
Exactly. Especially, I think, for those who don't have that typical safety net, no EPF or ETF contributions automatically happening.
Right.
If you're the one shouldering the entire responsibility for your financial future, well, general saving advice just doesn't cut it. You need specifics.
And the context here really demands action. We're seeing people live longer, much longer. Medical costs keep climbing.
Yeah.
And then there's the constant sort of background threat of inflation just eating away at your savings value over time.
So the goal for us today is clarity. We're taking what our sources say and trying to pin down that necessary monthly income for retirement, which then, becomes the starting point for calculating the really big number, that final lump sum adjusted for inflation, the target corpus.
Right. And maybe before we jump straight into the Sri Lankan rupee figures, it's worth just briefly touching on the sort of global benchmark financial planners often use, just to set the scene.
Yeah, good idea. Lay it out for us. What's the general rule of thumb people might have heard about?
Well, it's this pretty standard guideline called the 70 to 80% income replacement rule.
Okay.
The basic idea is your retirement income should cover about 70%, maybe 80% of what you were earning right before you stopped working.
70 to 80%. Okay, but why not 100? What happens to that other, 20 or 30%?
Yeah, the thinking behind it is pretty solid, actually. It accounts for some major expenses that just disappear when you retire.
Like what do you...
Well, first, all those work-related costs are gone. Commuting, maybe lunch is out, work clothes, things like that.
Okay, makes sense.
And second, and this is often the bigger chunk, you're hopefully no longer saving for retirement out of your income. That deduction stops.
Ah, right. You're not putting money away anymore because you're there.
Exactly. And usually those two things combined get you down into that 70 to 80% range pretty naturally.
Okay, I get the theory. Cutting savings and work costs, yeah. But, there's still that little voice, especially in an economy like Sri Lanka's right now. With the current cost of living here, is that 70–80% rule even, reliable? Or do we need to just ignore the theory and look purely at what things actually cost day to day?
That's the perfect transition, really,
Okay.
because while the principle is useful, the idea of replacing a portion of income, the actual amount, the number, has to be grounded in local reality, local purchasing power. You can't just take a percentage, which is why our sources immediately pivot from that global rule to very specific LKR-based lifestyle targets.
Okay, this is where it gets practical. And maybe a bit.
Yeah.
Eye-opening for some of us. This is the moment of truth, right?
Yeah.
Taking that theory and applying the sometimes harsh reality of the Sri Lankan cost of living. And the target number, it seems, varies hugely based on the lifestyle you want.
Absolutely. And this requires some real honesty from you, the listener. Are you aiming for, say, a simple debt-free life or more comfortable leisure? Or are you looking at high-end aspirational living?
The numbers reflect those choices directly.
They do.
So let's start at the base level, what our sources call the simple lifestyle. This is covering basics, food, utilities, minimal transport, maybe assuming you own your home, no major debts.
Right. For that kind of baseline requirement, the research points to needing a monthly income right now of somewhere between Rs 120,000 and Rs 130,000.
120 to 130K. Okay. That feels like the absolute floor, just keeping things ticking over economical.
That's the idea. Essentials covered, but not much room for extras.
Okay, let's step it up. The next level up is termed the semi-luxury lifestyle. This sounds more like what people want from retirement, right? Comfortable living.
Exactly. This isn't just scraping by. This is about being able to genuinely enjoy retirement. Affording hobbies, eating out sometimes, maybe some travel within the country, not stressing about every single bill.
Sounds good. What's the number for that?
Well, for this scenario, the target takes a pretty significant jump. It reflects the cost of that comfort and flexibility. You're probably looking at needing a monthly income between Rs 220,000 and Rs 260,000.
Wow, okay. That's roughly double the simple lifestyle, 220 to 260K. That's the bridge, as you said, between just surviving and actually enjoying things.
Precisely.
I can see a lot of listeners maybe aiming for that middle bracket. Feels like, achievable freedom. But then there's the top tier, the luxury lifestyle, defined as aspirational living.
Mm-hmm.
This is maintaining a really high standard. International travel, maybe premium healthcare options, dining out whenever you want. Basically, not having to budget too tightly.
Yeah, and if that's your goal, your non-negotiable target, the numbers get really substantial.
I bet.
To achieve and sustain that level of freedom, the sources suggest you'd need a monthly income starting around Rs 500,000 and going up to over 800,000 per month.
Whoa. 500,000 up to over 800,000 a month. That jump, especially to 800K plus, that's huge. Is that purely local luxury costs? Or is that factoring in things like needing foreign currency for travel?
It's likely a combination of both. At that kind of level, it's probably not just about high-end living in Colombo.
Right.
It probably reflects sustained international lifestyle choices, significant travel budgets, potentially premium healthcare abroad, maybe even managing overseas assets or property. It really underscores how personal this calculation is.
Yeah. Are you funding a fancy life here, or are you funding a global life based from here? Big difference.
Exactly.
It's quite jarring, though, seeing that range from, what, 130K on the low end to potentially over 800K on the high end. But the critical thing now, whichever lifestyle bracket you mentally put yourself in, is that you absolutely cannot look at these monthly figures in a vacuum.
No, you can't.
We have to immediately bring in the two, let's be honest, brutal realities of retirement planning. How long you'll need the money and inflation.
Let's tackle duration first. People are simply living longer, healthier, longer lives.
Yeah.
Our sources are increasingly suggesting that planning for a 30-year retirement span, say, from age 60 to 90, is probably the prudent minimum now.
30 years. That puts enormous pressure on the total amount you need saved up.
Immense pressure. And that longevity immediately brings us to, as you said, the real killer for retirement plans. Inflation.
The silent thief.
That's a good way to put it. If you need, say, our lost $250,000 a month to live comfortably today,
Right.
you certainly won't need that same $250,000 in 15 or 20 years when you actually retire. Inflation guarantees today's numbers will look way too small in the future.
And this is where, again, the Sri Lankan context is so important, isn't it?
Yeah.
Given the history of inflation here.
Absolutely. Assuming a nice, smooth, low inflation rate like you might see in some other economies, well, that could be dangerous planning here.
Yeah.
There was an anecdote in one source that really drove this home. Depending on what average future inflation rate you plug in, an expense that costs you Rs 100,000 today could easily cost Rs 250,000, maybe more, by the time you actually need to pay for it in retirement.
That's terrifying. But it's the reality we have to plan for. So, okay, we have these monthly targets adjusted upwards for inflation over time. How do we get to that single big number, that lump sum, the corpus that needs to generate this income without running out? We need the mechanics now.
Exactly. This is where we need to bring in a concept that turns this from just a worry into, well, a math problem you can actually solve. It's often called the safe withdrawal rate, or SWR.
Okay, safe withdrawal rate. And when we talk about the corpus of the big lump sum, we don't just mean your total savings at retirement, do we?
No.
It's the amount of capital needed so that you can draw that income stream, ideally for that whole 30-year period, without the pot running dry, maybe even leaving some behind.
That's the core idea. You need the capital base to sustain the withdrawals. And the most common rule of thumb used globally for this, historically, is the 4% rule.
The 4% rule. Okay, explain that.
It suggests that you can safely withdraw 4% of your total investment portfolio's value in your first year of retirement.
Right.
Then, in year 2, you take out the same amount as year 1, but adjusted upwards for inflation. And you keep doing that.
Adjusting for inflation each year.
Yes. And studies showed, based on historical market returns, that following this rule gave your money a very high probability, not guaranteed but high, of lasting for at least 30 years.
Okay, let's make that super simple.
Yeah.
If you can safely take out 4% in year 1, then just doing the reverse math, your total pot needs to be 100 divided by 4, which is 25 times your desired annual income in that first year of retirement.
Exactly. You've got it. It connects the monthly need to the total corpus perfectly.
25 times. Okay, let's use that middle example again. The semi-luxury lifestyle, needing Rs 250,000 per month.
Right. So Rs 250,000 a month is, 3 million rupees per year.
3 million annual income needed in year 1. Multiply that by 25.
Yep.
That means you need a target corpus of ours.
Yeah.
75 million.
Wow. 75 million rupees. And remember, that's based on today's cost of living for that lifestyle.
Ah, right. That's the kicker. That 75 million is in today's money. Now you have to inflate that number forward, maybe 15, 20 years, depending on when you plan to retire.
Precisely. That inflation-adjusted number, which will be significantly higher than 75 million, is the actual target you're aiming to accumulate.
So aiming for that comfortable semi-luxury retirement might mean your actual target corpus by the time you retire could easily be,
Yeah.
what, over 150 million rupees, depending on your time frame and inflation assumptions?
It absolutely could. And doing that calculation, seeing that potentially massive number, is often what forces high earners, entrepreneurs, to realize that just putting money in a savings account or a fixed deposit isn't going to cut it.
Not even close.
Especially if you're facing potentially high or volatile inflation like we've seen in Sri Lanka, you can't just save cash. Your money has to grow.
It needs to generate a real return, doesn't it? A return that actually beats the inflation rate over the long term.
That's the challenge. To build a corpus that can potentially hit, say, 150 million or more, your capital needs to be working hard for you, generating growth above inflation.
Which points towards investing, right? Not just saving. Investing in assets that have the potential to grow significantly over time.
It becomes pretty much essential. To fight that inflation erosion and reach those kinds of large corpus numbers, our sources really emphasize looking at growth-oriented investments.
Like what, typically?
Things like equities, perhaps through internationally diversified funds or unit trusts, designed to target real returns above local inflation. Maybe strategic real estate investments, which often act as an inflation hedge. You need assets that grow.
So the real goal isn't just covering your bills in year one of retirement. It's building a pot of capital big enough that its returns can provide that inflation-adjusted income for maybe 30 years without eating up the original principal too quickly.
That's the essence of successful retirement funding. That large corpus is the engine.
And once you have a realistic estimate of that final inflation-adjusted corpus number,
Then you can work backwards. You can look at what you have now, how many years you have left, and figure out, honestly, am I saving and investing enough today to realistically hit that target?
it lets you assess if your current strategy is aggressive enough or if you need to seriously ramp things up.
Exactly. It dictates your savings rate, your investment risk tolerance, everything.
So for everyone listening, whether your personal target number ends up being closer to that RS 130,000 a month or up near RS 800,000, the fundamental process starts now. To find that target corpus, that big, final, inflation-adjusted lump sum, that is the absolute bedrock of any serious retirement plan.
You absolutely have to know your destination before you can map the route, right?
Yeah.
Projecting inflation is complex, sure, and it's an estimate, but even a rough conservative estimate is infinitely better than just hoping for the best.
So true. The old saying holds. The best time to start planning for your financial future was yesterday. The next best time is right now.
Absolutely.
Figure out your desired annual income in today's money, multiply it by 25. That's your starting corpus target. Then the hard part. Project that forward with a realistic inflation rate to your retirement date.
That's your mission.
And once you have that number, even if it's scary, go look at what you're doing now. Look at your savings, your investments, and ask the tough question. Is this plan, is this growth trajectory actually going to get me there? That's the crucial next step.